Welcome back with the DireDM. We're going through the Bestiary series and going to combine some chimeric form theory with some production techniques. So we're going to look at the canine first, and we're going to combine a canine with a chimera with an insect called the antlion, which is a larval form of a flying insect. On the production side of this, we're going to kick off kind of step-by-step series from concept to prototype to finish art asset. So this is with the Time Machine game. Still playing with the title 2033 800K New Grimogen Game Studios that we're just getting the ink dry. So yeah, we're doing some open developments. Should be a lot of fun. Actually working live on how to do these things. And so this is a little concept design tray that I've jumped up, and with the canine anatomy, there we go. I will provide this for everybody. This is what I'm currently looking at. I was doing a cyber Cerebus creature, but instead we're going to look at some generic canine stuff. We're going to run the gambit between some of the domestic breeds. We'll look at the bull mastiff, pit bull, greyhound, wolf, and fox is the one we're going to focus on. And the fox is pretty interesting. It's quite different from the other animals. It's a little, I guess, has some similarities with the coyote, but they're burrowers. They're shorter legs, longer. They definitely behave differently, have different eyes, different sounds. Their skulls are quite a bit different. A little flatter and longer. Pretty wicked, though, carnivore teeth when compared to some of the other um, dog breeds out there, or canines. But I think in general, the pelvis, the back is higher than the thorax up area up here. And I think this is going to be a fun creature to design. So we're going to keep it mostly a foxhole for a companion for the Morlocks in the Time Machine. So the Morlocks, we're going to go with a canine form, and with the Eloi, we're going to use some cat and butterfly forms. So we're going to get to explore two of the most famous, popular animal anatomy types to start off with. And here's the burrowing creature, the antlion larva of the lacewing. And I used to play with these in my backyard. They dug these little pits, and you drop a little ant in there, and they'd flip the dirt up on him. You can see his little mandibles there, and eventually get him one by one. There'd be a little obstacle course of these things. So yeah, antlion and fox. I mean, they're fat and bulbous in their body, but they do have these long, really wicked mandibles and pinchers. So I have printed this up for myself. So I have a nice array. They're kind of spiky and bristly, but most insects are when you look at them close enough. You can see all the little hairs, but pretty wicked little critters. So I think combining this with the fox, I think we're going to keep the long, narrow body of the fox and the thorax. But I might segment it for the insect part and kind of play around with these little segments that curl all the way around the body. Definitely going to play with the pinchers and place those maybe on the front here somewhere. The muscles can interact, like maybe behind the cheekbone, so they can still bite, but they'll have to protrude. The pinchers will have to go past the nose of the fox's nose, I think, or the fox's skull. Okay, so while we're exploring chimeric shapes and production processes, I think I'm going to bounce between storytelling as well as focusing on the anatomy and exploring the merging of the two uh, anatomies and creature types. So for that, though, we'll have a couple of different brushes. So I'm going to skip naming off all the brushes and the how and the why of the um, gesture and silhouette and value, but I think maybe some details will come up as we go. I was just playing with the pollen brush. So in the year 800,000 CE, we're going to have a lot of mutated plants and animals, and you could call them mutants, I suppose, but it's just kind of one of the more fun parts of science fiction and fantasy to play around with. So in this future, there's tons of pollen, and there's like life is abundant, and so I think in the Time Machine, the original H.G. Wells, they kind of do that. So for that, I'm going to make sure I have my brushes all set up, and I have my brush settings again off screen. I'm not going to go through all the brushes like I normally would. It's maybe a little overkill, so I'm trying to simplify this and actually get some stuff done. So wish me luck. See how it goes. Um, there's some different sketching brushes to I wanted to play around with. I think just making it as much like a graphite and pencil as possible, so you can see what the stroke looks like on there. Um, and of course, I can discuss any of these specific brushes in detail. But for now, the main thing for this brush is that it kind of fades very gently, and I can press harder and get a wider, darker line. So we're going to play with the um, Fox anatomy first. So for that one, I have pure ref on, and I just go Alt 2 and then Alt 3. There we go, and I can arrange this over the top, and eventually I can even play with some of the opacity and things like that. But for right now, if I go back over here, and we'll just position this kind of to the side here, because I don't really need anything else other than just the skull and the skeleton as a whole, right? So I can go back over here and play first with the skull of the, well, we're going to do the gesture line first, right? So we're going to do the gesture in terms of the quick anatomy study. So in looking at the regular um, skeletal structure for the fox and the canine, and we're going to give them like a longer, oh, whoops, oh, what did I just do? And surprisingly, not many of the art books have like full artistic reference for the fox. So I always fall back on Tara Whitleck's lessons from many years ago. And so what's nice on the digital, of course, side here is um, we can replicate and we can rescale things on the fly. So I think getting that first gesture of the body, I'm just looking down here, and then as I go, I can always hit Control T, and I can move around. And maybe I did not put everything on the same layer yet. Oh, okay. Started putting the dust pollen on there, of course. So I just position this so I can get it into a spot where I can start doing the skull here and work out the basics of the skeleton. And so if we're going to merge together this creature, the fox and the antlion, I think most of this action we want in terms of the dynamic of the evolution of the creature, and which one to decide which ones we're more keeping, which one we're adding on to. And we don't have to get into too much hard science here, but just we want it to hint at what we're doing, right? So I think the pincher is probably going to come from back here behind the cheekbone, so that way the fox will still have his main canine's upper mandible and his lower jaw mandible, but then also we have the insectoid mandible that's going to come across here. And for that one, we'll check our reference again. So here we have, it's quite wide. There's like a lot of space in the middle and then real spiky as well. So, and then there's some little hairs and spikes that come off of there. I imagine those are more hair-like combined with the spikes for sensory, and a little bit of a flatter head. So there's a lot of difference between the two. So we can't really, we have to make a decision. So I think we're going to keep the narrow body and head of the fox, and then we'll keep the mandibles narrow as well with the actual, um, they curve in quite a bit. but the actual width of the skull for the fox, so we can kind of assume that these two, almost like sickle blades at the end, little fish hook type of creature. We're going to make the Morfox, the Morlock foxes. We're going to make them almost like sheep hounds. So they actually help um, herd the Eloi and keep them um, from wandering off, but also they act as guardians and protectors to keep them safe. So there's a duality role there. Of course, being kept safe that you can be eaten is, you know, the creepiness of the story, and so it makes the Time Machine almost a bit of a horror, Victorian steampunk horror. But yeah, I don't think I'm going to do too much more on the body. I think the legs, maybe make them even shorter so they're more burrow-ish. So I can look at some of the stubbier leg, and then we're going to also include some of the hooks and the claws of the make it more insectoid. So I think larger head, maybe a little bit thicker neck. I'm just getting the skeleton down for the first gesture, and maybe a little bit longer, and maybe we'll segment around. Look at the body. It has a little bit of the exoskeletal shell, and the pelvic girdle. I think having little hooked little claws, just like the insect has for their little feet. It's got a couple almost like single hooked claw coming out there. So I think I usually like to change up the number of digits or type it. It's really the skull and the digits. A lot of creatures share similar. Um, it's the skeleton between the spine, the shoulders, the pelvis, and the rib cage. It's usually the differences in the digits in the skull that you notice first. So looking down here at Terrell's old rendering of the fox, I can fill in a bit of these. Maybe I don't need all of the. Oops, wrong button. Don't need all of the scapula sticking up quite so high. There we go. So now it's a little bit bigger. Large, long tail. This is almost reminds me of a platypus at the moment with the mandibles. Almost makes it like a bill on there. But let's go ahead and shrink this down. Size. There we go. And I think putting it in a final rendering paper is a good idea. I don't know that it helps at the actual gesture stage. So I might play with the backgrounds a little bit and see if it makes sense just to have it on, yeah, like a regular old gray background whilst working. Yeah, the tailbone starts out here. The back of the pelvis is there. A lot of times that gets forgotten. And they have these, maybe the tail will have some combination of actual thorny bristles, a little more similar to the antlion, and combined with their fur, right? So we'll give them the fox fur as well. So I think that works out all right. And maybe another one in the back here. I think just giving them two hooks will be interesting. Maybe a little hook in the back here. I'm just looking at this basic shape here. Yeah, so this is getting into the chimera and the anatomy, right? So I think choosing a couple elements for each creature. So I'm trying to keep the canine shape here with in terms of the hoof or the foot, where the toes kind of come up like that. And they're usually more durable. The claws, they don't retract like a cat's retract, but They have a good long torso, strong rib cage here. I think, like I said, we're keeping us more mammalian, so I think having one be dominant over the other, doing a 50-50 chimeric form, of course, um, is totally doable as well. But I think for the canine, we're kind of that's the main form with this creature. So I'm kind of just switching the front leg as the back and the rear leg is the forward on here. So it kind of helps me with the design. I switch the legs up from which Terrell had drawn. So yeah, the legs are much shorter now. Um, so that means their tunnels will be shorter, smaller. They'll be able to get in and out of places easier. And yeah, I can go to another layer on top of this. Control Shift N. We'll do a silhouette. There we go. And then sometimes we can even use the silhouette for the there it goes, from the gesture directly. So that's not a bad idea. So I'll take this one here and I'll go, and now I'm going to use a broader gesture I just did with some line work, just loose, very loose sketches. And now I can come back in with these broader brushes and we can start looking at the silhouette by itself. And get a nice big, you can kind of see how large the tip is here. So really kind of stacks up over the top of the shape really nicely. And I think bringing the most of the torso in first, right? And the head. There we go. And just trying to get that mane, being loose still, following the gestural spirit of this. Don't start overthinking this and start designing detail too early. We're really just trying to get the mass and make sure the silhouette's identifiable. Make sure that it's following the basic anatomy still. So your skeletons, your structure, bony protrusions are still there. But you can really start playing around with your design at each of these steps. Normally on the gesture, I would do, at least 10 or 20 of them. And if in a real exploration, come up with a brand new, you might do 100 of them just to kind of get warmed up. Over the course of this project, I'll go back and redo some of these. There we go. And again, bony protrusion, make sure you know where that little elbow and all these little forearm muscles come into play down here. And I like to do big claws and paws, right? So there might be most definitely some desire to always make the claws and teeth a little bigger on my scarier creatures. Foxes give out terrifying sound. Oops, I was hitting the wrong key there. There we go. Quite different from a wolf or coyote, but there we go. There we go. And this doesn't come in. See the little gap there between. So I think holding the tilde key and whatever you're working, shortcut for erasing. There we go. And just spike it up a little more as I get the fullness of this in. And I'm gonna leave the mandible. So anything that tends to get me to zoom in real close right away, I try to avoid that. But here I can't help myself too much, so a little far away. Hit the reference, and I can hit the tab key. Help me kind of isolate what I'm working on. There we go. So yeah, the mandible, upper mandibles, gonna have an in between, like a third mandible, in between the upper and lower mandible. There's gonna be a little slot in the bone there for muscles to connect, and it can share the force of that bite in the neck muscles. So the endoskeletal creature is the mammal, and then the exoskeletal creature is the fox, mixed with the um, geez, there we go, antlion. I just totally blanked what the creature's called. There we go. And that fox there, I know they get really furry too, so it depends on. They have really big ears, so I can kind of we can accentuate that feature for sure, and maybe even play with. Are we going to do antenna and eyes? So I have a little checklist with the bestiary for what you know forms to join and play and connect together. So all their sensory organs, right? The eyes, the tongue, the nose, the ears. Each of these are opportunities to play with how you want to mix the shapes together. There we go. And I can take this apart now. It's already had my little creepy antlion fox started, right? Kind of works. So I can turn off the gesture for a moment and look at it from how this morphed already from the gesture, right? So I'll pull the gesture out of there. There we go. And pull the silhouette down. And yeah, that's already a pretty scraggly, inky looking thing. Yeah. So zoom back in here with my brush and maybe fill in and let's chisel out a few more areas and maybe play around with this fur and spike combo that we have going here. So just a reminder on how really amazing these creatures are, their face. So I'm gonna put that my pure ref up here and leave it off to the side as I'm going through these stages, the steps and the stages. Uh, and yeah, I think for the next set of video, I think I'm just going to paint and draw on this and do the voiceover later, or maybe just even play some music. So I will see you on the next one when we do value and pattern.